let loose and spent the night with a stranger at a bachelor party, but when I got home,
I've promised myself never to attend a bachelor's party again, and trust me, guys, I have my valid reasons. The last bachelor's party I attended ended up in me sleeping with an athlete and cheating on my husband. I messed up big time, and I can only hope that things don't end up getting worse than it already is. I've always been told that bachelor parties are wild and unpredictable, but I never imagined being at the receiving end of the wild activities. I never even imagined participating in any of the wild activities at all. That's why it breaks my heart to realize that I let my guard down, and now I've done something despicable. I'm very scared, guys. I'm so scared that I do not know what to do. I'm scared that my husband would find out, and then I'll be done for. I just know that he will never let this go or forgive me. There's no chance that the man I married will just overlook everything that happened that night. I'm scared, and I have many reasons to be scared. My name is Elena, and I'm a 31-year-old dancer and choreographer. I've been a choreographer for almost 10 years of my life. It's something that I fell in love with at a very young age. I'm married to a journalist, and I'll not be revealing his real name because I want to keep his identity private. I will just refer to my husband as Dane. He's 32 years old and he has an obsession for journalism. A dancer and a journalist? I know some of you might wonder how such an odd match ever came to be. To be honest, sometimes I also wonder how we managed to get married despite our weird professional comparisons. Dane and I have been married for 3 years now. We do not have children yet because we're always traveling for one thing or another. We decided not to have kids until we're perfectly sure that we would have enough time to raise them properly. I travel a lot because of my job as a dancer and choreographer, and that's how I ended up traveling to Chicago for a wedding. It's a client's wedding, and I literally didn't know anyone there except the client who had been an old friend of mine. It's that particular wedding that led me to be in this narrow-minded state I'm currently in. Now, I wish I rejected the job and never truly went to that wedding, but I guess that wish could only come true if wishes were horses, and unfortunately they are not. When I first got the gig, I spoke to my husband about it because I always took his permission before traveling for my job. He also takes permission from me before traveling for work-related activities. Forgive me for using the term gig. I think I'm old school and have the tendency to call things in a weird manner. Don't judge me, lol. When I spoke to Dane about it, he didn't have a problem. It was normal for me to travel for work, and he never complained. I think the reason he's always chilled about it is because he also travels for work on several occasions. Maybe he feels guilty and just decides that it's best if we have a mutual understanding. To be honest, neither Dane or I are home regularly, guys. Our schedules collide a lot, and that makes it hard for us to stay home together. You see the reason we decided to pause on having kids, right? If we had kids now, we'd be the world's worst parents ever. Except we hire a nanny, of course. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Dane gave me permission to go to Chicago for my work. He also told me that he'd be traveling for work, too. So, we both left the house yet again. When I landed in Chicago, it was a lot of work that awaited me. As a choreographer, I think one of my hardest challenges is managing choreography for weddings. It's the worst type of workload to ever have, but I have no choice but to indulge in it because I need to earn that money. My job was to teach the couple and their bridesmaids, groomsmen, some extra choreography that they could use for a perfect wedding entrance. They wanted something like those trendy couple entrances online. It's very hard to teach dance to couples who know nothing about dance or rhythm. It was very difficult for me, and by the time I flew there, I had just 2 weeks to make sure everyone was good in their respective distinctions. I almost gave up at the end of the day because none of them were cooperating as much as I wanted them to. I'm not joking when I say that I almost had a mental breakdown. Yeah, things like that are not foreign to my job, and anytime it happens, I like to call my husband and have a long talk with him. I did that almost throughout that particular trip, but I had to stop the moment Dane told me he had been occupied and had to work. I don't know what suddenly came into me or why I agreed to attend that particular bachelor's party. I'd never attended most of the bachelor's parties I'd been invited to while at work. The rare cases where I attended those parties were either because the couples were relatives or close friends of mine. That particular couple were just friends of mine that I met in college. When they invited me to their bachelor's party, I said no instantly. I didn't even ask for room to think about it. I just knew immediately that it was not something I wanted to do. One of my reasons for initially declining my request is because I had been exhausted from all the dancing and teaching I did. But the couple didn't take my no for an answer at all. They kept pestering me and asking me to come. Now I wish that I had held my ground and stuck to the no I said to them when they first asked. I'm sure that if I had just held on a little bit, things would have turned out differently. When I went to the bachelor's party, I realized that it was not the normal kind of bachelors. The couple did not have their bachelor's party separately. Instead, they did it together. It was really wild, and easily I stepped into the club. I knew that I should have really stayed home and not honored the invitation. There were drinks all over the place and people dancing like there was no tomorrow. I think any of you reading this who has been to a bachelor's party before would understand what I am talking about. It's crazy how couples just decide to celebrate in such a wild manner. This particular couple left no stone unturned, and they made sure that they went as wild as they possibly could. I felt so out of place that I did not think twice before asking to leave. The only problem was that I had arrived in the couple's car, and they were the ones who brought me to the club. I was not really familiar with Chicago that much, because I had not been there many times before. I wanted to go and ask the couples if they could call a taxi for me and tell the taxi exactly where to drop me off. But after thinking about it, I refused to do that because I thought it would be inconsiderate for me to go to stop the couple when they were having fun. I also didn't want to be a burden because I did not want to find myself in an uncomfortable situation. It did not help that I was really scared of the taxi driver taking me to an unknown location, and I would not even realize because I was not that familiar with Chicago. I'm one of those women that are big overthinkers and read into every single detail. I can become paranoid over the most trivial things, and I would give you the same reasons why I am right. I decided to just stay at the party and try my best to hold on till the couple were ready to be. I knew that it was not going to be early because the couple did not look like they planned on leaving the party that early. I just walked around and tasted the food that they had on display. I never want to miss a chance to eat good food. While I was walking around and eating anything in sight, a guy waved at me and gestured for me to come sit with him. I know that many of you will just call that the most cheesy thing you've ever heard, and to be honest, I was quite surprised that any guy had the courage to wave at me. I was so stupid that I thought I had a cardboard on my head that said married, and so I never really expected any guy to call out to me. But I was wrong, and the fact that I was married was not visible to everyone. I don't have a wedding ring if that's what you're thinking. It didn't even last 6 months before I lost it somewhere. My husband also misplaced his too, and I'm sure we are not the only couple who could not keep their wedding rings. Our job is very demanding and rough, and we understood that there was no way we could keep something as small as a ring. The first few weeks after my wedding, I had to struggle to keep it on while dancing. Sometimes it would slip off my fingers, and other times it would get stuck on my fingers. When I used to misplace it, I will try my best and look for it. But as time went on, I stopped trying, and I finally lost it because I knew that I would still be placed at the end of the day. My husband lost it while he was waiting in line with some of his colleagues to get an important interview. The struggle journalists go through just to be the one to take the interview and shove their mic into the face of the person they want to interview is wild. My husband always tells me about it, and it's a thing I'm always fascinated about. I'm sorry to deviate. I just wanted to make you guys understand that I did not intentionally lose my wedding ring, and I did not drop it off at the hotel intentionally. When the guy called me and gestured for me to come sit with him, I tried to pretend like I did not see him calling out to me. I just assumed that he was drunk, and he would eventually go away when he was tired. But at the end of the day, I was actually wrong, and he did not go away. He walked up to me and was smiling from ear to ear. I'm not even joking, guys. I'm telling the truth. I honestly believed that he was drunk, but I later discovered that he was not drunk at all. Instead of leaving like I thought he would, he introduced himself. I'm not going to say his real name because I don't want to reveal his identity too. I'll just refer to him as Brandon. He asked me for my name and I told him my name. I'm not going to lie. I actually found Brandon attractive when he walked up to me. I could obviously see back then that he had extremely white teeth that looked like those ones they bought with a lot of money. He had a diamond earring on one of his ears. It looked like a diamond earring. I'm not sure if it's fake or not. I think he's like one of those guys that look like they put a lot of money into their outfit and all. I did not understand why he was suddenly interested in talking to me, but I did not push him away. Before Brandon came to talk to me, I already had 1 or 2 drinks, so I was quite tipsy and jovial. I don't even know what the bartender mixed for me, and I drank. It looked good, and I just had a taste of it, but I could tell immediately after taking it that it was something strong. Brandon just started off by talking to me, and we spoke about random things. He asked me if I was related to the couple, and I said I was their choreographer. I also asked him what relationship he had with the couple, and he told me that he was a distant cousin of the groom. We went from having conversation to casually laughing, and I honestly don't even remember what we were laughing about. The party had gotten wilder, and people were dancing and puking and drinking and doing several things in the club. I'd never imagined that a bachelor party could go so crazy, and I even saw the couple doing several crazy things with other people. I was caught off guard when Brandon pulled me onto the dance floor. I'm not trying to play the victim card by saying that he just pulled me onto the dance floor. I was very aware of it, but I did not try to fight him. I let him drag me to the dance floor, and I felt really lightheaded. I know that I was not drunk and that I was somewhere between being conscious and being tipsy. The music and environment played a role, and I just went with the flow. I don't know if it was Brandon's expensive look and confidence, but I just know that I had been drawn to him at that moment. We danced, and we even had drinks together, and that was it, before things got wild. It first started from a kiss, and I don't know how it got crazy. I'm being honest when I say that I did not plan for it to get that far. But I would also be lying if I say that I did not indulge him in any way. For everything he did, I know that I gave him the courage to continue doing it. I felt, and I still feel like I am a very loose woman, because I encouraged Brandon in so many ways. I woke up the next morning in an unknown location, and Brandon was right next to me. That's when it all made sense to me. I spent the night with Brandon, a total stranger that I didn't even know from anywhere. I practically ran out of the hotel room because I was very ashamed of myself. I could not believe that I had cheated on my husband with a total stranger. The fact that I did not know Brandon before made it more disrespectful and crazy. Before leaving the hotel, Brandon gave me his business card, which contained all his information. He told me that he liked the night we spent together and would like to see me again. I only agreed to take the business card after he showed me the protection he had used because I was very scared that he did not use protection. It was on that business card that I discovered that Brandon was an athlete, and I even had to look him up online. He was a young athlete in his mid-20s, and I could not believe that I had slept with somebody that was 6 years younger than me. It felt surreal, and I honestly believed that something had gotten into me. But I knew that wasn't the truth. Prior to the bachelor's party, I'd been counting down the days till I left Chicago. But immediately after that party, I've been praying that time would stop till I was able to gather enough courage to see my husband. Well, time stops for no one, and I did not suddenly become an exception. I don't know how to say this, but I met with the consequences of my actions. I've started feeling the weight of what I did even without revealing the truth to my husband. The guilt slaps harder than anything I've ever experienced, and it's honestly crazy. I thought it was the couples who usually ended bachelor parties in crazy decisions, but I ended up being the one with the crazy decision. An athlete? Seriously? I cheated on my husband with a young athlete? I'm honestly very disgusted in myself. I wasn't even present on the wedding day, and I didn't take much videos like I usually did. I just hid into my shell and tried my best to pretend like everything was okay, when though I was firmly sure that nothing was okay. The wedding ended 1 week ago, but I'm still in Chicago. I don't have the courage to leave Chicago right now. My husband has been blowing up my phone consistently for the past few days, but I have intentionally ignored all his calls. I can't do it. How will I tell him? I have no choice than to go back tomorrow. Please help me, guys. I don't know what to do. I will be very honest. The truth is that I don't want him to find out. I still love him and I regret my decision. But I can't imagine losing him for anything in this world. I messed up big time, but I'm not ready to give up on him. I feel like a selfish fool and I know I am, but help me here. Update. I got caught, guys. Dane found out the truth on his own. I thought time would take my troubles away, but I guess that time only made it worse. They say time heals wounds, but it just made my own wound bigger. The funny thing is that the wound is not even mine in the first place. I'm the one who went ahead and ruined my marriage with my act of irresponsibility and stupidity. I had to finally leave Chicago because I could not stay there forever, at the end of the day, even though I wanted to. It took a lot of personal affirmation for me to finally go back to my house. I spent a lot of money renting a hotel in Chicago, and I think it was one of the things that gave me a reality check and said, I needed to go back. When I got back, I was very happy that my husband was not at home. I checked the many messages he sent me, but I did not reply. I couldn't even bring myself to open the messages for days, but I was finally able to check the messages when I got back to the house. He said in one of his messages that he was going on another work trip. He already left for the work trip a day before I got back. I felt relieved to know that I would not have to face him immediately, and that I would have some time to gather my thoughts and think of what to do. I was practically left in a state of denial because I didn't want to come into the present and accept what I have done. I kept trying to draw it out and pretend it was all a dream, but I realized that I was not helping myself and that I was only making matters worse. I read most of the comments you all dropped, but I think I stopped halfway when I realized that the comments were doing me more good and bad. A lot of people said a lot of hurtful things to me, and I can swear that it got to me. What is worse is the fact that I know that I deserved all of the insults and judgment I got. This is the first time I have ever shared my story on Reddit and made myself vulnerable to public scrutiny and judgment. And I do honestly hope that this will be the last time I will share a story on Reddit too. You guys remember that I told you my husband kept calling me continuously, but I ignored him. He left a lot of voice notes, and I was finally able to listen to them when I gathered my thoughts. In most of the voice notes, he sounded very angry, and he kept on saying that I was being very mysterious for not answering his calls and ignoring his text. The last voice note sent was the one that showed me just how angry he was. He sounded very furious, and he even told me that he would travel to Chicago if I did not call him back. I just assumed that it was a threat and that he would not follow through with it. By the time I even listened to that voice note, I was already out of Chicago. Thankfully, he also said he went for work, so he was not able to follow through with his threat. I finally decided to tell my husband the truth after most of the comments I read on Reddit. The comments made me understand that keeping the truth from my husband would only make me more of a selfish, lying woman, and that I made the decision and I should be ready to dance to the tunes of the music I played. I'm not going to come here and lie like I decided to tell the truth, just because many people said that I should tell the truth. It took a lot of convincing myself and seeing the truth from other people's perspective for me to actually decide to tell him the truth. I finally realized that I had been selfish to think that it was okay to cheat on my husband and then decide to keep the truth from him. Just like most people called me in the comments, I think I am actually an entitled woman, and it is very wrong. It's one thing to cheat, and it's another thing to try to keep the truth. When all this is over and the truth is finally revealed, I don't want him to finally end up hating me. One of the reasons I also finally decided to tell him the truth is because the athlete kept on messaging me. Apparently, he had gotten my phone number from the groom, who was his distant cousin. When I asked him how he was able to get the phone number, he said he lied to the groom and said he wanted to hire me for an event. I blocked him immediately after I found out how he got my number, but he kept messaging me with different numbers. I had to switch off my phone completely and start using another phone with a separate SIM because I was tired of receiving his calls. Every moment he tested me or tried to reach out to me just made me relieve the horrible thing I had done. He was like a bad glue that was stuck to me. At some point after I switched my phone back on, I noticed that he stopped texting and calling me. After I noticed that I finally deleted all the call logs and text messages he sent to me, that was how I was finally able to start using my SIM again. My husband only spent 1 week on his work trip before he finally got back. When he came back immediately, he asked me to sit down and have an important conversation with him. I'd been very shocked and scared, and I honestly believed that he had found out the truth. But ultimately, I discovered I was wrong because the conversation did not go the way I expected it to go. He was very angry, and he kept asking me why I suddenly decided to act the way I acted in Chicago. It was the perfect opportunity for me to tell him the truth and what happened, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it at that moment. I apologized to him and said that I was sick in Chicago. He didn't believe me at all and suggested that I had been up to something, and that was why I intentionally ignored him. He was so angry that he did not speak to me for the whole day since he got back. That day, I ran to the toilet and cried my eyes out. I kept asking myself that if he was angry at me for just ghosting him for a week, then how would he feel when he found out what I had done? It made me realize that I might have underestimated the gravity of what I had done. I got to understand that there was no way he was going to forgive me, and I slowly began to accept that. Even though I had been preparing to tell him the truth, I was still not fully prepared for when he found out. I never even expected him to find out on his own, and I can tell you all that I was not prepared at all. The level of shock and anxiety that hit me the moment he confronted me was nerve, actually. I have not been prepared, and it was that scenario that made me regret not telling him sooner. It was a Saturday morning, and both of us were at home for the first time in a very long time. My husband had still been very angry with me, and we were not in talking terms for a very long time. I made lunch for us, and I served him in the living room because he was watching TV. I did not expect him to suddenly push the food down till the plate shattered on the floor. The hot food almost burnt my skin, and I almost stepped on the shattered plate because of how shocked I had been. I got upset with him and asked him why he was acting like a child. Imagine me foolishly trying to think that I could scold him, not knowing that I was about to receive the shock of my life. To my surprise, he brought out his phone, increased his brightness, and then shoved the phone into my hands. When I squinted my eyes to see what he was trying to show me, my breath almost left me instantly. There were snaps of the text messages Brandon had sent to me. From the date, I could see that there were recent messages. I could not even believe that Dane was able to snap the texts that I didn't even know existed when I didn't even see them myself. I didn't even realize that I had underestimated just how smart my husband was. He was a journalist, and I had forgotten about that while I was caught up in my own personal problems. The messages were so recent that I was very sure that there were not the same messages I had deleted. I realized that he had searched my phone without me even knowing it, and that was where he took the pictures the text from. One of the messages consisted of these words: "I can't forget that night even though I've tried. Please stop ignoring me so I can see you again." Those were the disgusting messages he sent to me, and I can't even write them all. I'm so embarrassed that my own husband read all those messages. I forgot all about Brandon because he has stopped sending me messages for some time. I didn't bother checking again, and I was so caught up with trying to figure out how to tell my husband the truth that I did not even think of trying to hide the texts. I didn't even know that any such text existed at all. I was so surprised that I could not move, and I just stared at the phone like it was the only thing that could save me from the situation I had found myself, or rather than the situation I had brought upon myself. Dane shook his head while he was looking at me and spat on the floor. He told me that I took his trust and shoved it out of the window. He said it was because of women like me that men could not trust their wives. He also told me that he regretted ever giving me the freedom to work as I liked. He said so many things that I had to cover my ear and stop myself from hearing them all. The more I listened to him, the more I realized that I had messed up so badly, and the man that once adored me was now disgusted by everything that related to me. His words cut so deep that I was immensely embarrassed. He told me that he was even more disappointed that I chose to keep it from him for so many days and even up to 3 weeks. I tried to explain, even though I was stuttering and nothing sensible came out of my mouth. He didn't give me a chance to speak, and he just grabbed his car keys and left the house. I spent hours on the floor thinking about what happened and pinching myself so I could wake up and realize it has all been a dream. I had ruined my life for a few minutes with a stranger, and I had suffered it, and I am still suffering it in more ways than I could have ever imagined. I could not believe that just like that, my marriage was over, and it was all because of my decisions. Every day since that day has been the most miserable day of my life. I cannot even imagine what is going through his head. I know he despises me now, and the thought of that is making me go crazy. The thought that your husband who once loved you and showered you with so much affection now gets disgusted and ignores all your calls is very dreadful. I, for one, am still very shocked still. And even as I write this, I'm trying my best to get out of bed and leave the house because I have been stuck in the house for days. The only text message I got from Dane was that he was planning to get a divorce. He just warned me to sign the divorce papers immediately when it came and not try to make a scene, or else he would make sure I get humiliated. I don't underestimate his ability to keep to his words, and that is why I am not going to try to act out or hinder the divorce process. I also have a conscience, and I'll be evil if I try to make this divorce hard for him. Update 2. I'm now a divorcee. Wow, life has to be the most unpredictable thing human beings would ever face. The fact that a woman like me, who was married just 4 months ago and is now divorced in a very short time span, is crazy. Life has a way of humbling you in so many ways that you don't even know where to start from. I got karma, and it was very hard. Dane didn't even have to lift a finger before I regretted all my decisions all over again. In case you're wondering what has been happening for the past 4 months, I'll gladly tell you all because I've been itching to make this post. Just like I said I would, I signed the divorce papers without causing any drama because I knew that there was no need for me to do that. I knew that there was no use dragging it out and trying to play smart when I would end up being the fool at the end of the day. We were living in a rented apartment and did not have our own house, so there was no fight over property and all that stuff. I am also very thankful that we held out and did not have kids yet, or else it would have been very brutal if I had to be separated from my kids. I moved out of the apartment because I could not afford to pay for the apartment on my own, even though Dane decided he wanted to leave. I moved back to my aunt's house because I was living there before I got married. She's the one who has been a mother figure to me, and I can't tell you all she was not mad at me. The neighbors and every single person we knew were spreading rumors and giving their own calculated version of what happened. I never cared to modify anything that has been said about me because I just don't see the point. Even though some people are exaggerating and adding a little bit too much salt, I know they are not lying, and I brought it upon myself. If I have stayed faithful to my husband and not looked elsewhere, I would not have a reason to be embarrassed and become a laughingstock. Some people even call me damaged goods when they think I am not looking. But none of them got to me like the realization of what I'd done. I regret it every single day, and I don't know if the stigma would ever go away. I don't think any man can even come to the neighborhood without knowing the full stories because everyone seems to be talking about it. My aunt keeps reminding me that the rumors might never let me get married. It's been 4 months now, and I have said that I made a mistake and I'm over it. I've pitied myself long enough, and I've realized that regretting things and spending days remembering everything will not make or change anything. Dane has moved on with his life, and I deserve to move on with my life too. I have a career to get back to, and I need to start accepting the gigs that have been coming my way. I've learned my lesson, and it has taught me a lot, but that doesn't mean I should keep dwelling on the past. I've told my aunt that I only plan on staying with her for 2 more months before I move to New York. I have enough money saved up to open a dance studio and an office so that I can easily receive my clients. I've blocked all the background noises, and even when my aunt and other family members try to tell me what my ex-husband is up to and what is going on in his life, I always tell them I am not interested because I do not plan on reliving all those memories again. Well, that's all, guys. I'm just trying to get a place in New York before I move there. Brandon stopped contacting me 2 months before the divorce was finalized, and I have had my peace since then. I sincerely hope that no one makes the kind of bad decisions I've made, and women should just try their best to be more present and think about the consequences of their actions before they indulge any male gender. Also, remember to stay safe at bachelor parties, lol. Shalom, peace.
My girlfriend cheated on me with my boss, and instead of feeling remorseful over the whole ordeal, she blamed it on my inability to make something for myself. Can you guys imagine? She tried to gaslight me. Well, she had always done that. Blamed me for everything that affected us. I should have seen that as a red flag. Most people saw that as a red flag. But maybe I always thought she would change the R. It was coming from a good place in her heart. Stupid, right? Yeah, that's what I was when I found out that she was sneaking around with my boss. Like you can imagine the look on my face at that very moment. The girl I had put my soul and heart into pleasing, and the man I looked up to and was trying to be like having an affair together. I was stupefied, trying to find my anger somewhere. I wanted it so badly, the anger, but all I could be was shocked. Still shocked as I write down this experience. I guess I should have suspected when she began comparing every single thing I did to my boss. Everything I was not to him. Even outside in public spaces, she found it funny to make the center of the joke in front of our friends. It was demeaning, and my friends thought so too, whenever we communicated on the group chat. They just couldn't say it in front of her because they didn't want to disrespect me. They were majorly my friends and were stunned at how the girlfriend I came to love wasn't even the least bit supportive towards my work. My life was pathetic, and my girlfriend made sure I never forgot it. There was a particular instance when we had been invited to one of my friend's birthday parties. Somehow the talk of work had come up, and you all needed to see how the sneer on my girlfriend's face became evident. Everyone was just celebrating milestones they had achieved, just normal chit-chat between friends, and it turned into a competition for me with my girlfriend there. As everyone was commenting on their achievements, I grew smaller and smaller as the sneer on her face grew bigger. And as you've guessed, she let me have it as soon as we were out of the party. She had already been dropping some side comments at the party, but the full force of her blunt remarks came to play once we got home. The comparison never stopped, and my friends began to question if there was something going on that I wasn't aware of. Most of them were sold on the idea that my girlfriend's love for my boss wasn't ordinary, and that something could be going on. But foolish old me dismissed their thoughts. I mean, she was my girlfriend and someone I had plans of marrying. There was no way she could do me dirty like that after how far we've come. Well, I thought wrong. Before I move in deeper to this mess of an experience, my name is Adam, and I'm 25 years old, and my girlfriend's name is Ella, and she's 24, just a year younger than me. We met at a college party organized by the frat brothers and found out we were both juniors. That is, we were in our third year of college and were under the same school. We hit it off, and I quickly fell for her sense of humor. After 2 months of getting to know her, I asked her to go out with me. That's when we began dating, and everything had been beautiful throughout college. She was with me always. We were the sweet couple everyone knew and wanted to be like in college. We attended events together, including seminars our school held, and I asked her to move in with me after a year of dating. I was in love with her then. I now realized that I had made a mistake. Love was for fools, because why else would someone who I loved and who claimed to love me too do me this dirty? Come to think of it, she hadn't even told me she had loved me in a while. We've been dating for over 4 years now, and like I had said earlier, I had planned to propose to her before she started to show her true colors. But cheating with my boss? I had never seen that coming. If the future me had come to tell me this before I caught her in the act, I wouldn't have believed. I would have laughed and told future me to go eat grass or something untoward. That's how much I loved my girlfriend. I always believed and trusted her with blind faith. She could do no wrong in my eyes. I even cut off some people in my life, people I've been tight with even before my college days, people I called my family. I dropped them all for her because I thought she was my person. My fellow Redditors, you couldn't spell foolish without somehow spelling my name. I was indeed foolish. As I pointed out earlier, I started becoming suspicious of my girlfriend having an affair with my boss immediately my friends pointed it out. I mean, everything became increasingly suspicious. My boss had been asking of her before on a daily basis, but as I started becoming suspicious, it was now as if he was asking to rub it in my face that, "Oh mate, I'm sharing your girlfriend with you." Like there was a funny game they were playing in my face. Of course, I know you all are thinking how weird it is for your boss to be asking of your girlfriend in the first place, but I hadn't thought anything was weird about it. I really was a wimp. Well, they had met at our office annual party. I should have suspected from that night because once we had gotten back home from the party, she just wouldn't shut up about him. I had introduced them at the office party, and it's now the dirty eyes my boss had been giving my girlfriend were playing in my mind. I hadn't known it then. I became suspicious of everything now. Whenever she compared me, the nagging thought slammed into my head. How did I find out she was cheating on me? Well, that was easy. All it took was just me messing up at work. One mess up that set me back a promotion, or maybe it had been a plan between them, but I would never know. However, the mess up at work started the chain of events that led to my girlfriend cheating on me with my boss. By the time the signs started showing clearly to me, I was already suspecting that there was something weird going on, but this mess up helped me confirm it. I had come home from work and told her how the promotions team decided I wasn't going to go one step higher because there was a mix-up in my accounts. I had been expecting the promotion since I hit 2 years with my company. I was planning a big party to celebrate the promotion. I had told my girlfriend how much the promotion meant to me, and she seemed happy for me that I was getting it. Or that's probably what I thought, because she didn't seem happy for me when I came home from work without the promotion. That was the day I heard the nastiest things coming out from my girlfriend's mouth. I had never felt so small like how I felt that day. Then the comparisons began almost immediately. Talmaboot, if I was as smart as my boss, I would probably be leading my own company and not working for someone else. That I couldn't even get my accounts straight, so I might never run a company one day. Don't get me wrong, I loved my job. I might say I loved my boss, even platonically. I believed I mentioned somewhere earlier that I wanted to be like him and run my own company. But at the very moment, I hated everything about my job and my life. That's when I decided that was enough was enough. I decided I wasn't going to be thrown to the criticism wolf, my girlfriend. I had always supported her, everything she had aimed for. I always tried as much as possible to be there for her. Half of my salary went to her tuition because she was studying for her master's. I provided, I loved, and I supported. But what did I get in return? Her disrespect. The audacity of that woman. Well, I was done being a coddled wimp. I had gone to bed boiling that night because my hard work and sweat was all dashed till the next promotional offer showed up. I didn't know when that opportunity was going to come up again, and that made me madder. If you thought I was angry about my girlfriend not supporting me, then you're half wrong. I loved someone fully, but once I detached, I was gone. And that's exactly what happened that night. I had confirmed that something was worth suspecting between her and my boss, and now I just needed to lay a trap. A trap was laid. Our annual office party was in a week, and I decided to clear out all the doubts in my head that I wasn't being paranoid. Mind you, she had proceeded to start acting strange after that night. Coming home late, texting until the late night hours, I had felt she knew our relationship was on shaky grounds. I just felt stupid that I hadn't realized it since, so my plan was to humiliate the two of them. But I needed to catch them together and clear out all doubts that she wasn't cheating. I decided to clear up my doubts while waiting for an opportunity to catch her with my boss. I planned a day of pampering to celebrate her getting her master's degree. Just a simple day of shopping and then dinner that night. There was this YSL store where my boss always shopped for his outfits, and with our annual office party coming up, I planned that by some stroke of luck he'll show up. Guess what? He did. He showed up while we were mid-shopping. My girl was in the changing room trying on an outfit, and my boss just popped up staring down at me with a smirk. My girlfriend used the opportunity to come out from the changing room with her new dress on, and my fellow Redditors, you all needed to be there to witness the way their eyes didn't leave each other. It was like I was a side piece, something the dust had brought in. I walked up to the cashier to pay once I had enough, and you guys won't believe what happened next. My boss handed in his card to the cashier and said it was on the house. He had insulted me in front of my girl, who by the way was grinning and smirking like a Cheshire cat. There was no bigger humiliation than that, and I couldn't refuse him because I wasn't quite ready to let go of my job yet. Not until I had paid back what they handed to me, and I trusted that in good time I would. We left the clothing store after declining to have lunch with my boss. Well, I declined. My girlfriend was still tongue-tied. And frankly, I had no idea what she saw in him. It definitely couldn't be his physical appearance because I was topping the charts where he was concerned. Then it definitely was the money and power of being a boss. That's the appeal my girlfriend wanted, and I couldn't even get a promotion. She was a gold digger, true and true. I just wished I had noticed it earlier. I probably would have still respected my boss and loved my job. She had poisoned my mind. In fact, she had probably poisoned his too. Well, I didn't care. Like calls to like, doesn't it? After the whole shopping fiasco, of which I was still seething, I took her to dinner in one of the fanciest restaurants in Florida. Note, I was seething because I hadn't yet found a way to out them or make them pay for the humiliation, not because of the girl that sat opposite me and had a dinner conversation with her phone through the entire night. At this point, I was ready to call it quits. to just throw everything away and accuse her of rubbing bodies with my boss behind my back, but I held myself back. One, because I didn't have enough evidence to back my claim, and two, she would laugh. She would laugh at my foolishness because I didn't have enough evidence. So I had to endure the massively boring dinner and wonder how we had gotten here. Had she always been this disdainful? When had we get here? I didn't have the answer to all the questions my head turned up, my fellow Redditors. Remember that opportunity I had talked about? Well, it came when she decided to leave her phone to go use the restroom. Her phone pinged with a text as I sighted her opening the door to the restroom, and sure enough, she had received a text from my boss. His name was Angelo, and she had his name saved with various heart emojis. I really didn't know what more was an obvious sign than this. I decided to do the ego check thing most men do and sent her a text from my phone and my name popped up. My government name, lol. I dropped back her phone and smiled to myself. Well, my doubt had been cleared ultimately. They were sneaking around for sure. Now I just had to catch them, and my office's annual party was my best shot. My office's annual party came quickly, and I was so ready. Towards the end of the party, my girlfriend disappeared as I had banked on her doing. The side eyes my boss and her had been throwing at each other all night was enough indication. So when they disappeared together, I knew something was going to go down. So once they disappeared, I got into action. I tapped on my glass lightly to get everyone's attention in the hall and indicated it was time for the vote of thanks speech. Of course, my boss wasn't with us at the moment, and that meant people began looking for him. That day, I felt happy. I joined them in the search. In fact, I had led the search. My first guess was my boss's office. And oh my, were they so predictable. I had thought they were smart given that I had looked up to my boss once upon a time, but it seemed love and lust made people do stupid things. My opinion, by the way. And what do you know, they forgot to lock the door too. Couldn't believe I once found the girl that was in front of me to be my person. Couldn't also believe I once looked up to the man staring at me with incredulous shock. There was a heavy gasp as other people walked into the office after me. I raised up my phone and started recording them as they hurriedly tried to dress, prompting them to smile for the camera lol. It was all weird after that. Weird for them because of the glaring eyes they were getting and the murmurs. I dumped my girlfriend then and there and went home after the party. Of course, as I had stated earlier, she didn't let it rest and tried to gaslight me. My ex, as I would now call her, followed me back to my house, shouting in my ear as I tried to get in through the door. She didn't for once believe her cheating was her fault. There was nothing that wasn't thrown in my face on the night I dumped her. She started from how it was my fault. I brought her to my office party and introduced her to my boss. She continued with if I'd had at least some semblance of power, she wouldn't have been attracted to my boss in the first place. Unable to bear any of her guilt tripping, I helped her pack and threw her things outside. Can you imagine the little witch thought I was gullible to fall for her gaslighting and manipulation? Because that's what she switched to when she realized I was being serious about kicking her out. Her smart mouth wasn't so smart anymore as she begged me that she didn't have any family in the city to go stay with. I didn't give a fudge about that. I was just happy that I had finally come to my senses, but I wasn't done with my humiliation plan. I hadn't even started. My ex continued begging that night, and I told her to go and meet the man she had let share her bed, then shut the door in her face. That was oddly satisfying, my fellow Redditors. The look on her face as I slammed it into her face, but it wasn't enough for my hurt ego. The next morning, I walked into the office to discover I had been fired. I laughed through the morning. It seemed my ex had taken my advice and ratted me out to him. Well, I didn't leave without giving my boss what I thought of him. And a stroke of luck was on my side that morning as I discovered my boss was in some kind of meeting with people termed the higher-ups. Like my boss wasn't the only one that called the shots in how the office was run. He answered to people above him. Nothing else could have made my day at the time than discovering the power my ex found appealing was momentary, and I was going to strip him of that little power. My fellow Redditors, revenge is a dish best served cold, right? I don't agree with that saying. It's best served hot, in my opinion. I waited until the meeting was finished and angled my laptop on the receptionist's desk so it faced the door where their meeting was held. Yes, that's right. I had done that so the higher-ups could see what the person they put in charge was using his office to do. They came out one by one, and their eyes immediately went to the video playing on the laptop, and their mouths formed grim lines. According to company laws, my boss wasn't going to be fired, but he was definitely going to get a query and maybe even a demotion. I left and put them behind me, even though my revenge hadn't been completely served, but I knew an opportunity was going to present itself. And it did 1 year later. I started working with the rival of my previous company as one of their financial advisors. There I was appreciated and had somehow almost merrily forgotten about the ordeal with my ex and my former boss. Well, almost being the key word here, until my ex showed up in my office. If you're wondering if I had seen that coming, trust me when I say I had not. Sure, my plan was to go rub it into her face when I had finally gotten successful. Show her what she had left instead of supporting. Show her what she had missed. But having her come to me? Epic stuff. She needed advice on a financial venture she wanted to embark on, and she had heard I was supposedly the best at the moment. Those were the words she had used. I know you guys would think this was my moment to shut her down and eat into her. No, it wasn't my moment yet, as much as I had wanted it to be. I offered her my advice on what she wanted to know, and she left. But it seems she was so delusional that she thought I had fallen for her once. That meant I could still fall for her again. My ex became a leech using financial advices as a cover-up. Can you imagine the witch? Did she think I was her puppet? I know once again that you guys would have expected me to shut her down surely this time, but I kept up the charade. I decided to drop the bomb one day on her and ask her how about the man she had exchanged saliva with while she was still dating me, and that shut her down. She stopped coming to my office. It only shut her down for a week though, as she started up again next week, her questions becoming more and more suspicious. However, anytime I asked about my former boss, she disappeared again. She always did this when we were together. Anytime it was time to take responsibility for something, she found a way to evade it. Every time, and it was coming to play even after a year of us not being together. I remembered a time back in college when this bad habit of hers came into play. She had a project she was supposed to do work on with her group members and submit before the end of the semester. Her group members had come to me complaining back then that she was the reason why the project was being set back. I didn't see my girlfriend for 2 whole days. She knew she had been wrong, but she would rather disappear than admit it. As you can guess, she popped back up when the project had already been fixed up by her colleagues and took all the glory. Of course, I should have seen how bad her character was from the start of our relationship, but I had been love-struck like I had mentioned numerous times before. I'm sure almost half of you reading this have done and overlooked so much for that sake of love. That didn't make me a wimp, or even if it did, I had risen above that, and now my eyes had been cleared to how I was being used. Another instance of one of her habits, in addition to the other ones I've narrated, was also during college. My girl back then had a habit of backstabbing people, including her friends. That was why she didn't have anyone to go to when I had kicked her out. However, back then I had thought it was just her being overly sensitive to people. I thought maybe people didn't understand her, so that's why she was quick to lose friends, but as I narrate this, I quickly realized she had been a backstabber. She had told me once that her only friend had betrayed her, but I had run into her only friend at a coffee shop back then. In fact, she had approached me and had a lot of things to say about my ex. How my ex made her take the blame for something my ex had obviously caused. The details are all a blur in my head, but I was only realizing it after she had done that same to me. Everything I had overlooked was suddenly replaying in my head, and my resolve strengthened. I had protected her, provided for her, and even supported her, but she had deemed me her play tool. And even a year later, she still thought she could play games with me, going off and on and thinking I was her dog who was loyal. Well, she had something coming for her. As was true to her habit, she showed up again after her disappearing act and started acting all lovey with me in front of my colleagues. One day, she brought cake from the bakery nearby and shared it with my colleagues, who threw catcalls to us, and I was disgusted. The following days, she continued her charade, possibly trying to woo me and my colleagues by being sweet, an emotion she wasn't capable of. Her charade continued for quite some time while I planned my line of attack. My luck came through for me when my friend gave me a call and said he had spotted my ex and my former boss together in a restaurant. According to him, my boss hadn't looked so put together as he usually was, and my ex seemed to be shouting at him over money issues. Well, that solved the financial advice issue. That's why she had been coming to me. She wanted money. Remember my plan to completely humiliate her, Redditors? The opportunity had planted itself. The next time she came to my office, I threw money on the table and told her to disappear from my life. And of course, you can guess she took it. But once a leech, always a leech. She showed up the next day asking for more money, and I had never felt more disgusted than I did at the moment. I hated her. I hated the fact that I had once been in love with this person. After a week of throwing money at my ex's face, she came to me with a proposition. When I thought there was no more low she could go, Redditors, my ex went lower. She came to me to advise her on how to embezzle money. My ex and my former boss were planning to embezzle money from the company I had worked before. Apparently, my boss had fallen so low that he had to resort to stealing. After the whole fiasco, he had been demoted to my position, and I couldn't believe. My dish had been served a lol, and it had been served hot because even till now they were still digging their own graves. They were wrecked and still trying to wreck themselves even more. I told her I couldn't help her, but she could keep me updated. I could use the updates to set them up with the police and the IRS, and I did. Over time, she kept updating me of the progress and telling me how they planned to transfer the money to an unregistered account under her grandmother's name. She was so stupid and blabbed a lot about her progress, like as if she was looking down on me. She, the smart one, and the one who was able to run an embezzlement fraud, and me, the dog who she thought was loyal to her. What she didn't know was that she was setting up her trap because I was recording everything she was saying, making sure I don't implicate myself. After 2 weeks of our conversation, my ex barged into my office with a Birkin bag on her arm and looking all glammed up. She came by to gloat that her first heist had gone successfully, and an opportunist would always be one. It seemed she was planning on running another heist. I was ever ready to listen to her plans, biding my time for karma to catch up. I was a very patient man. However, I was a patient man with revenge on my mind. It seemed her second heist hadn't gone as well because she came back to my office and looked like she was in trouble. She ranted that people were after her and poking into her bank accounts and private informations. I had made that anonymous tip to the IRS that there was an illegal sum of money entering an unregistered account. But that didn't seem to deter her. I doubt you guys could have guessed what she wanted to do next. Plan another fraud? Nope. My money-blinded ex decided to throw a party. I wasn't even surprised because finally I knew what she was. Her character shone through at that very moment. I guess it had always shown through since, but like I said, my eyes were now clearly open. And I knew if let free, she would turn another man into her victim if she didn't learn her lesson. I pitied my boss even because he was under the same trap I had been, doing her will because he wanted to please her. I knew what that was like. He had probably been misled to believe she was this sweet soul like I had been. I was sure in his eyes she could do no wrong. Well, I hoped he realized soon. I was once like him. Or maybe the two of them deserved each other. A pair of bad habits and vile behaviors was what they were. Well, my ex invited me to the party, to rub the success of their relationship in my face, of course. But she didn't know what was coming for her. I know you all would be wondering what's wrong with me and why I was this calm with someone who had done me dirty with my boss. Why was I this calm, you may be wondering. That's because I felt pity for them. And of course, I would never miss a party celebrating the downfall of people who had done me bad. They just didn't know their party was going to take a terrible turn, and I wanted to be there for the ride. In the spirit of serving revenge, I made another anonymous call to the IRS again, and this time submitted all our recorded conversation as evidence. I got to their condo to find the party well on the way, flashy lights and everything that screamed, "I just got rich and I want to throw my money around." A very predictable behavior. I kept to myself, biding my time for the real entertainment to start. It didn't take long for it to start, though, as my ex began to give her speech of how she had come from nothing. Lol, the irony. I knew that she had meant that to be a smack on my face. The police badged in at that moment and demanded for who went by my ex's name. And of course, her guest wasted no time in pointing to her. As the police took her and my former boss out, I raised my glass to her in salute. My part had been done. My fellow Redditors, you know what they say about those who rose so fast to success that they didn't merit. They tended to drag everyone around them down when they were going down themselves. That's what my ex tried to do. Anytime I thought I was finally rid of her, the leech found some way to make me a part of her problem. I couldn't stop questioning how I had gotten tangled up with her in the first place. What had I seen in her? Was I really lacking in love that I had fallen for that walking red flag? I had never truly even known her. We had dated for 4 years, but as her character came forth after our breakup, I started questioning my sanity. I hadn't known anything about her. Even the little I knew had been enough to turn present day me the other direction. So why had I stuck with her? I refused to believe I was that gullible, my fellow Redditors. But there was nothing else that could explain why. I know all these seem like a stuff for the books, but it happened to me. I didn't even know what to term it. It was just so surreal. But I came out of it. I was called to the police station because my ex had named me as one of the accomplices in helping her embezzle the funds. According to her, my former boss was the one who came up with the plan, and I provided insight on how to go about it while she was just roped into it through blackmail. Can you believe that? Blackmail? Her claim was that I had blackmailed her into doing my bidding. Apparently, the blackmail material I had was the video of them cheating together, and that I had planned on submitting it to her university to get her fired, so she had no option but to go along with her plans. But the problem with people who were panicking and new to crime? They made mistakes and didn't cover their tracks. It was very easy to clear my name as I didn't have anything to do with the fraud in the first place. I revealed I was the one that made the anonymous tip and played the recording of her making her plans for the police. My fellow Redditors, you needed to witness the shock on her face. It was epic, the start of her downfall. Then, given her character, she switched her story immediately. It was my former boss that had made her do it. She confessed she loved him and wanted to do anything to please him, so it was a given that she followed him to partake in the fraud. When she saw the police wasn't buying her story, my ex became bitter and began ratting out terrible things in front of everyone, one to my former boss. A leopard could never hide its spots. Like I said, what I felt for my former boss was pity, as he was now on the receiving end, just like I had been once upon time. Guilt tripped and blamed instead of being supported because they had planned it both together. Well, the police let me go after a round of investigations that cleared my name up and I was free to go. My ex, however, had burst into a tantrum, crying and raising her voice to whoever would listen that she was innocent, even though the police had found the unregistered account in her grandmother's name. She was truly delusional. Well, long story short, my former boss got the major slap on the wrist while my ex was let off with a minor charge. I don't know how she manipulated her way out of that, but I'm more than glad that she was out of my life. I was very glad that she was out of my life. And unlike how she usually pops up out of nowhere, I don't think she was going to be coming anywhere near me for at least a long time. And if she does, the restriction order I had out for her would definitely be a stopping factor. My ex was finally well and truly dealt with. My fellow Redditors, I hope we've all learned from my experience because I know I learned a lot from my ex and my former boss. I wish what I had narrated above was a lore, but it had happened real life to me. You never know the true character of a person until you and the person are in a bad situation. That's when the person's true character shows. I had learned that the hard way. That's why I am narrating my experience on this platform. People who aren't usually your family only look out for themselves. The world we live in is harsh, and I hope no one gets to experience what I had in the hands of my ex. I wasn't coddled. I just overlooked a lot because I thought I had loved her once upon a time. Now I had learned. Well, until next time, Redditors, stay chilling.